We're in Petty Harbor celebrating the spoken word this Christmas with recitations, an old tradition in Newfoundland and Labrador.
It was a fine winter's evening, all houses were aglow, and for Santa's arrival there was 1 week to go.
We've gathered together some well-known reciters for our show: Karen Ennis, Dave Padden, Harry Ingram, and Dave Penny. I'm really curious about how you go about memorizing. These are such lengthy pieces.
Repeat, repeat, repeat. That's it. Drive yourself mad and everybody else around you. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Usually bar myself in the basement. That's it.
With lovely accents, funny sayings, their warmth and their charm, they conjure pleasant images with their good-natured yarns, telling stories to bring a smile, laughter, and maybe a tear. A Christmas gift to our viewers as we close out the year.
Christmas is here. I couldn't help but notice back in the middle of November that Christmas was here then too. And so I'm just gonna tell you a little something about that. It seems to be getting earlier every year. So here's a little something I wrote called Christmas is Here. Christmas season's almost here. From my childhood I remember that the tree went up 2 days before, not the middle of November. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas and jingle all the way. But didn't we throw the pumpkin out? It seems like yesterday. Each year is getting earlier. It's really way too soon. Sure, the Christmas tree will be blasty, and for the nog, you'll need a spoon. Now, I'm not being a Scrooge or Grinch. Now, don't be thinking that. Just eat your Halloween candy before you wear your Santa hat. And I'm all for being on the ball, I'll tell you that's a fact. But the wife had all the presents bought before the times went back. Now, it's not just the wife that's like it. The stores are like it too. October, I think they all start, and I can prove what I say is true. While piecing together a costume for Halloween this year, I had to rummage through the tinsel and bulbs to find a set of ears. Now, what if all the holidays got earlier as well? Should we have witches and goblins at Easter time and God only knows what else? Oh, what a tangled mess we'd have, would it ever be straightened out? As each holiday got earlier, Happy Hanukkah, St. Patrick would shout. Santa'd have to give up his suit and trade it for summer gear, and the Easter bunny be tipsy on St. Patrick's old green beer. The groundhog wouldn't see shadow cold weather he would shun, and Cupid wouldn't shoot an arrow. Sure, he'd have his moose to hunt. And what if the Royal Regatta were to change from what we know? They'd practice in the summer all right, but on frozen lakes they'd row. As each holiday got earlier, it would cause us such a mess, all because one neighbour wanted his lights up before the rest. So I have just one more question now before I take my leave. Should old acquaintance be forgot? Please, not till New Year's Eve. Thank you.
So we're going to keep the Christmas recitations coming. Karen Ennis, you're going to do another one for us now. And I think this one has to do with singing, which is something you're familiar with.
It does, yes. So this was written by Hubert Fury, and you know, not everybody was blessed with a beautiful singing voice. But that's okay, because if you get creative, you'll find other uses. And so that's what this recitation is about. It's called Matilda. Matilda had a terrible voice. Still, she joined the choir. Well, they had no choice. She was Father McNulty's only niece, and if she didn't get in, well, there'd be no peace. Miss Mary Delane was in charge that year, and at Matilda's appearance, she shook with fear. Though to sing to the Lord she did aspire, Matilda's voice wasn't meant for choir. The problem was her voice was too high. It rattled the jets up in the sky. And whenever she sang a high C, well, she'd sneeze, like a roaring gale from the Arctic seas. And when the music said rest, well, she'd blow her nose with a force that came straight up from her toes. And people would hear a police car sound, and traffic would stop for miles around. Now, time crept up to those Christmas days when the choir assembled to sing God's praise. On Christmas Eve, they stood to sing, ready to make those voices ring. In reverent awe, their voices soared, and at silent night, they gently lowered. And things went well as well as could be, until Matilda inhaled and hit a high D. They say that note was sung so high, every gull in the harbor lay down to die. And people in pews all covered their ears at the sound of a tractor grinding its gears. The lights went out, women went faint, the statues shivered, lost all their paint. Matilda, undaunted, continued to sing as the church bell, unaided, started to ring. Now the noise hit the window, shattered the glass, freezing all the people who had come to say Mass. Matilda kept singing, her voice soaring higher, until it went through the roof and knocked off the spire. They say that note was sung so sharp that it popped every string on Gabriel's harp. What was that? Asked St. Peter in a voice so grim. Oh, that's just Matilda singing a Christmas hymn. Now the angels in halos had gathered to sing glory and praise in each precious wing. But the force of Matilda's high D was so great that it blew every halo straight through heaven's gate. And the worst of it all, as it came to pass, was that Father McNulty never got to say Mass. So he bowed to opinion, and to bring back peace, he went to the choir to speak to his niece. Matilda, he said, please don't sing. To praise the Lord, find some other thing. So she thought for a moment, and then said, I will. They need a new foghorn down at Cape Anguille. So the seagulls all scatter and the whales swim like mad, but for the very first time, Matilda was glad. She found a new use for her terrible voice, and many a sailor was glad of her choice. In the lighthouse you'll find her enraptured in song, singing to ships as they pass along. And when they hear the high D, outward they veer. Near the rocks off the coast they never come near. And laugh if you must, but you'll never expect. There's never a ship to this day that's been wrecked by sunkers or shoals or storm winds that sting, because of Matilda, who so loved to sing.
This is a story called Christmas Flight, and some of our listeners in Labrador may remember a pilot named Mike Byrne, who was up there for many years and flew on the coast. So this is from a story about Mike that I heard, and it's based on a few sort of personal experiences when I was flying on the coast. And I guess it deals with some of the choices we all have to make occasionally. It was Christmas, 1962, on the northern Labrador coast. The winter's hardships were nothing new. This was worse than most. The steamer's crew almost got in, but finally lost the bet. With heavy ice, you roll the dice, and plans are overset. And the steamer carries most with which the northern endures, so not much grub upon the shelves at the DNLA stores. But there's little fear, with lots of deer and partridge in the country. What haunts them now is another one, another kind of empty. For the basics weren't the only thing aboard that mail boat, but a steamer's not the only way to keep young hopes afloat. And who's a loving mom or dad who'd ever want to see the innocence and sadness with no gifts beneath the tree? And so the desperate call went out from the northern town of Nain to the airline down in Goose Bay Town. Could presents come by plane? But the storm had raged for 6 long days, and not a plane had flown as the pilot stepped into the cold and left the warmth of home. It was minus 35 and black as pitch at 6 a.m. Forecast called for some improvement as the day went on. Arriving at the hangar, daylight showing in the east, ceiling at 1,000 feet, viz. 2 miles at least. 600 horses came to life in a cloud of oily smoke, and as the engine warmed, the pilot knew he carried every hope of girls and boys for Christmas toys in the cabin of his plane, while anxious parents paced the floors in every house in Nain. But then he thought about his own, his wife and sons and daughter, the family picture clipped upon the panel of the otter. With the weather bad, the doubts he had about the flight had grown. Would joy for families up in Nain bring heartbreak to his own? For judgment's not an easy thing, and hopes are hard to weigh. He wondered if he'd do this flight on any other day. 2 hours north, 2 hours back, this Christmas Eve for sure. As he lifted off in threatening skies, his doubts grew ever more. The northbound flight went well enough beneath the sullen cloud. As he read his map upon his knee, he thought his thoughts out loud. 200 miles with not a sign of humankind to show. How small a speck am I upon this shield of ice and snow. He landed in a whiteout on the harbour ice in Nain, and as he shut the engine down, he thought he heard the strain of woodwind, brass and strings drifting softly from the land. 'Twas Handel's great Messiah from the Inuit brass band. The willing hands of the Nain Inuit helped unload the plane. The anxious pilot took on fuel and then took off again. With the weather bad, he knew the southbound flight would be no lark. The days are short that time of year. Soon it would be dark. With the ceiling at 1,000 feet, he knew he'd get no higher. And he thought about his loving wife at home beside the fire, the excitement of his children as they gathered round the tree, waited for their father to come home this Christmas Eve. The snow was light at first, visibility not bad, but it came down thick and it came down quick. 2 miles was all he had. Descending to 500 feet to keep the ground in sight, as time ticked by, he realized he soon would lose the light. And he knew the ridge lay right ahead, just past which Doctor lay. And as he read his map in the gathering dusk, he knew just one mistake could end his life in the rock and ice that towered above his plane. With viz now down to half a mile, he searched the ground in vain. Then all at once the ground was gone. He was swallowed by the snow. He'd had his chance to run for Postville back a while ago. And as fear rose up in the back of his throat, he cursed himself a fool and prayed to the man for a guiding hand past the ridge so hard and cruel. The minutes seemed like hours when each one could be your last. Your universe a small cockpit with lighting softly cast. The engine seems to speak to you, his voice so calm and steady. Carolyn, Catherine, no, Eddie. Carolyn, Catherine, no, Eddie. Then in the swirling snow, a sudden shadow on the right, another to the left of him, both quickly lost to sight. And then the snow began to thin, and he thought he could make a tree line out beneath his wings, or the shoreline round a lake. The weather cleared as quickly as it had closed not long ago. With daylight fading in the west, the stars began to show. And as he hung suspended over the frozen, silent land, he offered up a prayer of thanks and considered the guiding hand. He had no recollection of the last part of the flight, the landing or the drive back home that frosty northern night. He knelt before his children and embraced them tenderly, kissed his wife and held her close beside the Christmas tree. And as he lay in bed that night, before he went to sleep, he thought about how close he'd come to the unseen ridge so steep, and the choices that a man can make, and who has the final say, whether the wheel goes up or down on any given day. For judgment's not an easy thing, and hopes are hard to weigh. No, judgment's not an easy thing, and hopes are hard to weigh. Thank you.
You ever see a tree, like you go and get a tree, you find one there cut, but one side is gone blasty. You know what I mean?
Oh, geez, dead and red. Yeah.
Dead and red, pretty much dried out and red. It's called the blasty Christmas. It snowed that day. Large flakes were gently falling crist and crossed. But I was digging out the plastic tree up in the loft. That thing was good to no one because the color faded off, but the neighbors all had their trees up this 3 months. I figured that I'd go up in the woods and get my axe, find a snotty var, and give the trunk a few good whacks. Bring it home and put it up so then I could relax and wait for Santa Claus to do the rest. I went out over the woods and into a pole line. I figured there with all that woods I'd find a nice straight pine. But after several miles I knew I might as well resign, because in there it was nothing only scraff. I saw one there already cut where someone must have been. To me it looked all right, it was just a little thin. But still it was right sturdy, tall and straight just like a pin. But the other side was all gone blasty. I knew if I were to get a tree before the break of Christmas, I'd have to keep on driving till I crossed over the isthmus. Or give the crowd out at the village selling trees some business. But then I thought up another plan. I looked at that old tree again, the one that was gone dead. The trunk was kind of whitish from myrrh bladders that had bled. Of course, there are 3 Christmas colors, green and white and red. So I said, I'll take that home, best kind. I noticed then along the road all kinds of trees discarded. Trees that didn't make the grade and then were disregarded. Some had little knobs on them and others kind of parted. I took them too, like youngsters do with strays. So now the poor unwanted trees, they're all home at my place and stuck up in the living room with water at the base. With 27 trees in there, I was running out of space. I wondered if the blasty trees would sell. I took them to the village and I propped them up like daisies. When 8 were sold, I covered costs and then the rest was gravy. Blasty trees had taken off and everyone went crazy. And all the boys with nice fresh trees were rotted. The local papers interviewed me, so did several bloggers. They ran a story about the tree on CBC and Rogers. I rented some equipment and I hired a team of loggers to truck in every blasty tree they found. They came in with a flatbed. It was 400 trees I allow, so I figured why stop and sell only full trees now? There's nothing that says I can't make some wreaths of blasty boughs. I sold them too for $80 each. I took some trees that were gone squish and I began to cleave off the little reddish twigs and carefully I weaved them all together in a string to hang on people's eave so they could pin them on with lights right festive. I knows I didn't make the money that year. It was mad. I made more money at the wood than Harvey Land and Lad. But it was just a one-time thing, a one-time fad. The next year everything went back to green. I took that artificial tree again, the one that was a flop, the one I thought was much too worn and faded at the top. In tribute to that first one and the others in the crop, I took it down and spray painted her blasty. All right.
Okay, I got something here now called the 12 gauge of Christmas. My wife has some issues with the provincial wildlife regulations, so this is about that, and this is part of her community service. On the first day of Christmas, my missus gave to me a partridge in a pear tree. I said, thank you, my darling. You know it's my favorite, and the tree should be nice if we can decorate it. But did you buy a small game license or make it from cardboard, like last year? On the second day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 2 bottle turs. Now you know I loves that. With onions and gravy and a bit of pork fat. I figured I'd call up my good buddy Pat. They're illegal, said Pat. I'm not touching that. On the third day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 3 French hens and a bit of lobscouse. Though I think a French hen is a kind of a grouse. She nailed all 3 out in back of the house, right in the middle of town. On the 4th day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 4 falling birds, because that's what they did when she nailed all 4 with one blast from her 12 gauge just down off the shore. Just what they were, though she wasn't too sure. Turned out that they were all eiders. On the 5th day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 5 golden eyes. Well, that's the book name, I suppose, but we call them pie birds, and certainly she knows they're the same thing as eiders as far as that goes. Not supposed to be at them in the fall. On the 6th day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 6 geese a-laying in my freezer so nice. I dare say I'll roast one tonight, stuffed with rice. She might even sell you one for the right price, but don't tell the wildlife, eh? On the 7th day of Christmas, my missus went to see 7 swans a-swimming in a pond in the park. She figured she'd have them sometime after dark. I said, they're only for looks, girl. They're not for a knife and fork. But what do that taste like, I wonder? On the 8th day of Christmas, my missus happened to be with 8 young maids panching a great big bull moose out on the bog in a small droke of spruce. She had no GPS, but sir, that's no excuse. I think they were in the wrong area. On the 9th day of Christmas, my missus went to be with 9 ladies throwing darts at the SUF hall. She always takes something to eat for them all. Perhaps something she knocked down and dragged home last fall. Something illegal for sure. On the 10th day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 10 rabbits she got in her slips yesterday. But the season's not open, I just had to say. Oh yeah, she said. What odds anyway? Mice is some hard on me nerves. On the 11th day of Christmas, my missus gave to me 11 Piper's gift cards. And so off I went to the Piper's to pick up my Christmas present. I had her gift bought. It was a camouflage tent. She said, you probably want a gun cleaning kit. Yeah. On the 12th day of Christmas, my missus woke to see 12 wildlife officers. 11 days in court, 10 months in jail, 9 grand in fines, 8 grand for a lawyer, 7 years no hunting, 6 times on the news, 5 cabins gone, 4 ATVs, 3 new skidoos, 2 pickup trucks, and now she's down to the HMP.
Recitations of humor, memories, and more, the tradition continues of taking the floor to share words and rhymes that bring such delight. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.